Okay, we're here for Story Vault number 4.
This one's kind of special to us.
Very special to us. It's about the commander of the Hoodlum Squad and Captain Joe Spiess.
He was a detective in there,
detective,
and he talks about John Doherty and the whole crew, and then we chime in with a couple of our little sillinesses that we found over that producer John found in the newspaper that we chuckle about, and but unfortunately, Captain Spiess passed away here recently, and that's why this really means a lot to us. Real close to the family.
Yeah,
it was very special and an honor to have him on.
How cool is that?
Great
show. We got him on tape forever.
Great show.
And he did an unbelievable job at 94. He was doing it.
Yeah.
Sharp as a tack. Just great man.
Yeah. And then, we talked a little bit about it in the podcast. So in the podcast coming up on Monday, we do talk a little bit about the gathering we had, last night?
Yeah.
I got injured.
Yeah.
We all met up with Joe Spiess. Yeah. I am running hurt today. But no, like I said, this was really special to us. It's good timing to put it out. The Spiess family is very close to all of us, and hope you enjoy.
Enjoy the Story Vault number 4. Peace.
It was the Hoodlum Squad.
Yeah.
We'd like to hear a little bit about that squad, how it was formed, and what you guys' mission was.
I was in the morality squad when they formed the Hoodlum Squad, so Doherty took me into the Hoodlum Squad. I was one of the original members. It was Bob Richter's, Bob Green.
I got to ask you, what was his rank, John Doherty's rank at the time?
What was what?
Was John Doherty's rank when he brought you in there?
He was a lieutenant then.
A lieutenant?
Yeah.
Is Doherty older or younger than you?
Oh, he was older than me.
So how old would he be now, I wonder?
Well, he was in World War II.
Oh. Well.
He was a hero, too.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I remember my mom
He wiped out a Japanese machine gun nest by himself.
Really?
And he was one tough guy. I mean, he really, and if you talk to him, he's the nicest man you ever met. But he was all business.
That's the legend. The legend is that he was one bad
dude.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, my mom would talk about him.
Really?
Yeah. I think she had a secret crush on him, to be honest with you.
Anyway, they formed a Hoodlum Squad, and what our duties was to more or less keep a Mafia under control, in St. Louis. So his orders were, we knew where they bummed and everything. They bummed out around Devolver and Diggerville at that time, and different places. We knew all their hangouts. So he said, I want you guys to go there. If they're in a bar, you go in and sit next to them. And don't say a word to them. Just give them a dirty look.
But they knew 100% you were the police?
We were, yeah. But we never said nothing. Doherty said, don't say a word to them. They talk to you, don't answer them. If they leave, follow them in their cars.
It was overt following.
If they're at home, sit on their house until they leave, and then follow them some more.
Can you give us a name of a few of the famous mobsters that we might know that you did that with?
John Vertelli, number one. And also Tony G.
Giordano?
Yeah.
You bellied up to a bar with Tony G.
One night. It was a snowy night. Auto on Maple Avenue in the 7th. It was the 12th district then. He was putting a lot of mouth out. I said, well, we'll walk down there to the call box. I'm going to call a wagon. We're taking you in our car. So I walked up down here, had about $200 shoes on. I walked right in the deep snow. We walked all the way down there. He didn't like me.
So
we had a 20-hour rule in effect at that time in St. Louis, where we booked him suspected of murder. And they were involved in murders.
Yeah.
There was one of murder up in the vicinity of I think it was Fair Natural Bridge up in an alley. They found the body of this lawyer who owns a cigarette company. And they had the Anthony Novelty Company out in Pine Lawn. But anyway, all the people that we talked to said that they were the ones that killed him. And so naturally, as we locked him up for 20 hours, we booked suspected that murder. They didn't like it. Nothing came of it.
booked him for 20 hours.
Good old days. Yeah, the good old days.
So what other crimes, whenever you look, you hear about mob stories and everything, there was gambling. What other crimes were they involved in? Obviously they would whack a couple people here and there, but what kind of crimes were they committing at the time?
Bombings.
Bombings, okay.
But Landy was one of the gang, and he bombed at cleaners there at Montgomery and Grand years ago.
Did they kill anybody
He
within
was
that
a
bombing?
cold-blooded killer too, huh?
Did they kill somebody in that bombing?
I don't think they killed anybody, but
Just blew up somebody's
just a
business.
message, you know.
Just a message.
What about Buster Wortman?
Huh?
What about Buster Wortman? Did you investigate him at all?
Buster Wortman. This was a Sunday night. It was sleeting, snowing, freezing rain, and Virgil Klein was my partner. He was a sergeant, and he said everybody's off on Sunday night. We're going to work because the thieves are still out there. So we're out riding around, and there wasn't much doing naturally with that kind of weather. So we're coming west on North Market towards 9th Street, and there's the boulevard stop there, and we stopped the police car, and there's a car coming going north on 9th Street, and the back end of it was sitting down very low, and we looked at it. We didn't recognize who was in it or anything, but it just really looked funny, you know. So I took a right turn to go after them, and you could see the wheels spin. They were trying to get away. So they were going up and down Benton and Warren, and they end up on Broadway and come back down to North Market, went east there towards Produce Row, and they lost control and run into that loading dock there. And two guys jump out and run. Well, I chased the driver, and I caught him. It was Manuel Villa. So we bring him in. We get the car. We open the trunk. Here's the big safe in the trunk. But we take Villa in, and we call the garage. They took the safe in the headquarters up on the 4th floor for us. And we look up the business card. We get the name of the person to call in case of a burglary. They had this woman's name on it. So we call her and have her come down. So we says, we want you to open this safe. See, I can't do that. So you got to do it. It's evidence that there might be something missing. So she opens the safe. It's loaded with papers. And we make copies of all the papers. And we give it to the FBI. Well, at that time, Buster was on trial for income tax evasion and already had testified that a lot of these papers were destroyed. It was regarding horse races and all kinds of stuff. Anyway.
Wasn't Buster, was he the East St. Louis? He was East St. Louis, wasn't he, mostly?
Yeah, he had a moat over there.
Okay.
He lived like a little island. He lived down up there.
Right.
And, a lot of the hots from St. Louis worked under him. The young ones coming up.
A lot of the whats?
Huh?
A lot of the whats? The hots?
Yeah.
What is a hot?
Part of this at the edit is we were going to talk about the 1950s and 60s policemen, and they had different vernacular than we had. Hots was one of them. What was a hot to you?
Well, they were thieves or
Career criminals. And,
yeah, right.
Active guys.
Mm-hmm.
Commonly referred to now as shitheads.
Right.
Anyway, going on with that story, we have Manuel Villa arrested, and he won't talk. And the 5th District got a hold of his brother, texted Villa, that next morning, and they got him. I think he had burglar tools in the car. Anyway, they locked him up. So I went down to see him, and I says, you're screwing with some bad people here, taking that safe out of there. He said, I ain't worried about anybody. So they didn't have nothing. They didn't issue a warrant on him, so they released him. But I don't know, maybe a week or 2 weeks later, I'm at home, and one morning I get up, I putting on the coffee before I go to work, and I had to turn on the radio and listen to the news, and broadcast over a well-known North St. Louis hoodlum was shot to death in his shoe shine parlor at 14th and St. Louis. Tex Avila.
He wasn't worried about it, huh?
Yeah.
He worried about it. He still ain't worried about it. He did.
Anyway,
Probably should have.
We get information that this other kid was with him. And Manuel hadn't talked yet. We had him warrants issued on him, and he was in city jail. The other kid that was on the burglary, we got him in. I can't think of his name offhand, but we got him in, and we told him, we said, your partner got murdered, and there's a good chance you're going to get murdered. You better get this straightened out. So he tells us the story. He said, what happened? He said, Tex and I hit one of Anthony Novelty Company's cigarette trucks, belonging to John Vitale. And he said, the next thing we know, somebody knocks on my door, on Texas door, and he said, we want to talk to you. They said, we know what you did. Now you're going to do what we tell you now, or you ain't going to be telling anybody nothing. And they said, we'll see you out on the red carpet. The red carpet was the carpet in front of John Vitale's desk out there. So he said they went out there, him and Gene Lewis was the other kid. And Tex and Gene Lewis went out there, and they told him, we want you to hit this joint and get this safe. We want you to take it over to the McKinley Bridge and throw it in the river. Don't open it, or That was the story. Anyway,
Burn the paper.
Anyway, the story goes on. He gave us a bunch of cleanups and safe jobs, and we told him, we said, we'll talk to the circuit attorney for you, try to tell him you cooperated, and see if we can get you a little break. And the day he was leaving to go to the penitentiary, we went over to see him.
Say goodbye to him.
And he said, I want to thank you guys. He said, I didn't believe you when you first told me you'd help me. He said, but you did, and I appreciate it. And we asked him, we said, do you think that he had Tex killed? He said, I don't know, but if they did, I won't live long in the penitentiary. It was about 2 months later he got stabbed to death up there.
Now, did Buster Wortman go to prison after this?
Mm-hmm.
Did Buster Wortman end up going to penitentiary after this?
I think he did, yeah. He got time. I had no part of
for-
that. It was handled by the feds.
The one that I want to hear about is the bombing, the pursuit and the bombing of Richard Lee Boddicker.
Boddicker?
Boddicker, okay.
Well, I don't know too much about the bombing. I do know it happened, and I know who did it. I heard who did it. He's dead too now. But anyway, one night, Boach and I, with partners, Tom Boach, I think it was a Sunday night, we had information that they were going to kick in a furniture store at Riverview and right at the county line in the city. We were driving west on West Florissant, but it was about 2:30 in the morning. We see a car coming east, and for some reason, I got nosy about it. I said, let's see who these people are. It just looked funny, It was, you could see there was stuff in the back of the car. So I made a U-turn to go get them, and they took off. We chased them over on Holly Avenue. They abandoned the car and left it sit in the middle of the street. They ran up an alley, ran west in an alley from Holly Avenue. Tom Boach, I told him, you go down south, and I'm going to go up the alley, see if we can catch these guys. So I'm going down this alley, pitch black, I can't see nothing. I've got my flashlight with me. And I stand by a pole because my training under John Doherty, he was a great believer in sit and wait and you hear stuff. I stood by a pole in the alley and just listened. Sure enough, I heard a couple guys talking. And I went up towards where I heard it, and I said, come out of there before I blow your head off. So they both come out like this. And they come out in the alley, and while they're out there, the third guy runs out of a yard down there, and I pop one in the air trying to get him to stop.
You're going to get
I
suspended.
didn't shoot at him.
Not back then.
We
Warning
were
shots
allowed to
illegal
fire
then.
warning shots, but I fired the one in the air and made it run faster. Much later, I was a sergeant in the 7th District, and I come to work one day, and the desk sergeant says, there's a guy in the holdover wants to talk to you. So I go in there, it's Richard Lee Boddicker. And he said, hey, Joe. He said, you remember that night you shot at me? up Holly Avenue? I said, was that you, Rich? He said, yeah. He said, I thought you were going to kill me. And, anyway, that was the last time I talked to Rich. And the night he got killed was not even too far away from my house. It was at West Florissant and
Lucas and Hunt, wasn't it?
yeah, Lucas and Hunt, yeah.
And then he died in a bombing,
Yeah.
car bombing.
Bosco Owens, they say, did the bombing.
Who did?
Bosco Owens. They found his body in the trunk of the car out in the airport.
So he died.
Later.
So everybody was getting killed.
Oh, yeah. Back
Boddicker was really kind of a likable guy, really. He was a thief and all, but he was kind of another story about Richard Boddicker. Young Jim Shea and I were working together in the robbery division, I think we were in at the time, and they have an information at a house on Madison Avenue right next to a tavern. It was loaded with stolen items. So we go home and we get on some old clothes, Shay and I, and we go into the bar. I don't bring my gun with me. And we're sitting there and we order beer and we're talking to the barmaid. We told her we just got out of the joint, you know, and she said, well, I got some friends next door you'd like to meet. Maybe they could give you something to do. I said, yeah. So anyway, she calls over and the guy comes over and tells me they just got out of the joint. So they told us to come over. There's about a half a dozen guys in the house, you know, and we're sitting there and they start questioning us, you know, where were you at and all that, and what'd you do? And somebody knocks on the front door. And I'm sitting on a couch, and the couch faces the front door. He opens the door, who's standing there? Richard Lee Bodecker. And he starts laughing.
Gigs up.
Hell
He
no.
says, do they know who you are? I said, no, but they do now.
They do now. They're about to learn.
That's a good one. We're clipping that one. Captain Spiess, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So every one of us did time on the St. Louis Police Department, and everybody had a mentor. I'd be interested to know who you considered your mentor on your time when you first got on the St. Louis Police Department.
I'd have to say John Doherty.
Yeah.
I worked with John 3 different times, and fact is, I was going to leave the department when I was young, before Joe was even born. And my wife had an offer from the company she worked for to move to California. We got a car, an apartment, and pretty good salary. And I waited, and you know, I had just not been that long out of the Army, and I thought, hell, I don't want to go out there and leave my family, you know.
Yeah.
So we stayed. John told me, he said, you don't want to go out there. He said, stay here. He said, you're going to go far in the police department. So I did. I stayed. I did go far.
Yeah, and you did.
I mean, if there's a legend, the number one legend in his police department is John Doherty.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows and talks about him.
Yep.
Yep.
So for him to like you like he did, and
It says
that's a
something
hell of
right
a-
there.
That's a great compliment, yeah.
It really is. Wow, it's great to hear from a legend like that.
Yep, that's just one of the clips from an hour, like I said, an hour and a half. And
Hoodlum Squad.
the Hoodlum Squad was really poignant in that, was the leadership of John Doherty. And JJ said it in the clip that of all the legends that you hear about in the police department, you really think that dude was something else. And just and then that led producer John to what you said earlier. It ruined his life. He got on
Newsroom.com.
to newsroom.com, and he started just reading article after article about John Doherty and his legendary status. But the one that I found, Landy, was obviously a gangster. He's a member of the Egan Rats. And Joe Spiess Jr., our senior, mentioned that he blew up the cleaners, you know, or he was suspected of blowing up the cleaners.
This Landy guy was.
Yeah, he was a member of the
Isidore Landy.
He didn't fare so well with John Doherty.
He did.
No, he played a game of fuck around and find out with the Hoodlum Squad. And I'm going to read you just some stuff here. And the headline reads, Landy fined $250 for scuffle with police. And here's how the story goes. Isidore Landy, former convict, was found guilty in city court yesterday of resisting arrest on November the 13th when he was involved in a scuffle with the police on the Page Boulevard station. The verdict was reached in a court deliberated by 6 men. Took him 30 minutes, and Landy was liable to be fined up to $500, but they only gave him $250. After the verdict, one of the jurors wanted police protection because they were fearful of their life. And I love the at the end here. Involved in the scuffle with Landy were Captain John Doherty, head of the police Hoodlum Squad, and 2 of its members, Detectives Robert Richters and Edward Boney. For his prizes in the game of Fuck Around and Find Out, Landy suffered a fractured jaw and 4 broken ribs.
That's just a little scuffle.
Just a
scuffle.
And he got fined.
Yeah, he got
He
fined.
got fined. And then there's the other one.
They
Hold on.
only did it to $250 because they gave him a break, figured he needed a hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let me expand upon that, too. Here's another article from 1956, rather. Isidore Landy was arrested by Colonel Doherty for vagrancy by tramping and wandering. Said he was just released from the Missouri Penitentiary, but every time they stopped him, he had between $300 and $1,200 in his pocket, but he didn't have a job. So they, since he didn't have a job, they got him for tramping and wandering.
Tramping and wandering. What, do we still have that on the books? Tramping and wandering.
So he did 16
I'm afraid
years.
I could be charged with that.
He did 16 years of a 25-year sentence for the bombing that you talked about.
The cleaners?
Yes. The report stated he's been associating with such notorious hoodlums as John Vitale, Anthony Giordano, and Anthony LaPaparo.
All mentioned by Joe Spiess in his little clip, and then that the Hoodlum Squad was on their game, man. They were not putting up with any bullshit.
No.
So they Doherty and Sergeant Frank Burns grabbed him at Busch Stadium for gambling, and they quoted him as saying, "He picked the wrong team tonight. I thought Milwaukee would win."
Oh my God.
And JJ, you talked to John Doherty's nephew
Yes.
quite a bit, don't you?
Actually, he's a good friend of mine. When I first got in the police department, we actually bummed in the same tavern called Hilltop. You guys are all familiar with that bar. He was a good friend, still is. He's got his own company. He's in the pipe fitters union and does pipe fitting and pipe covering. But he's tight with James Michaels III, Beans, who's a friend of mine also. It's ironic that these two
Right.
One's James Michaels, well-known family in St. Louis, and then John Doherty's nephew are best of friends. They came across each other. They worked together. They've been out of town on business together, doing their pipe fitters do, and it does.
That's awesome.
They are best of friends, and they're.
Joe Spiess Jr., the Brentwood Chief of Police, is who in the police department were your mentors?
Well, I was lucky to have 3 or 4 super high quality mentors, but if I had to pick, my first one would be my dad, by far.